Athens killed an old man. He did not command an army. He did not burn a temple. He did not try to become king. His weapon was much smaller. It was a question, and that question was dangerous enough to make one of the most famous democracies in history sentence him to death. His name was Socrates. Socrates does not look like the beginning of Western philosophy. He left no book. He built no empire. He founded no official school in his lifetime. He was an old man in simple clothes, often walking barefoot through the streets of Athens. He stopped politicians, poets, soldiers, craftsmen, and young men in public places. Then he asked them what sounded like a simple question: what is justice? What is courage? What is virtue? What is a good life? At first, people answered confidently. Then Socrates asked another question. Then another. Then another. And slowly, their confidence began to collapse. This happened in Athens, a city that was proud of speech. Athenians debated in assemblies. They argued in courts. They watched plays that mocked powerful men. They voted on war, law, and public life. Athens told itself a powerful story. We are not ruled by one king. We are citizens. We speak. We judge. We decide. But Socrates asked the question hidden underneath that story. What if the people who decide do not understand what they are deciding? What if a city can vote, speak, and argue, but still be confused about justice? That was the wound Socrates touched. Socrates did not usually attack people directly. He did something more annoying. He let people defeat themselves. A politician would say he understood justice. Socrates would ask him to define it. A soldier would say he understood courage. Socrates would ask whether courage was the same as reckless confidence. A poet would speak beautifully. Socrates would ask whether beauty made the poet wise. The answers often sounded strong at first. But under questioning, they bent, cracked, and finally broke. This became the Socratic method, not giving people answers, but forcing them to see the weakness inside their own answers. Socrates said something that sounded humble. He said he knew that he did not know. But in Athens, this humility became an insult. Because if Socrates was wise only because he knew his ignorance, then what did that say about everyone else? The confident politician looked foolish. The respected poet looked confused. The successful craftsman looked limited. The proud citizen looked unexamined. Socrates did not simply embarrass individuals. He embarrassed a whole culture of certainty. He showed Athens that speaking well was not the same as knowing well. And for a city built on public speech, that was a terrifying idea. But Socrates did not live in a calm Athens. He lived through war, plague, defeat, and political revenge. Athens had fought Sparta in the Peloponnesian War. The war drained the city. The plague killed thousands. The empire weakened. The confidence of Athens cracked. After defeat, the city became suspicious. People wanted someone to blame. And Socrates was easy to blame. Some of the young men around him were connected to political disaster. To his enemies, Socrates was not just asking questions. He was weakening respect for tradition, weakening trust in leaders, weakening the faith of the young. In a wounded city, questions can look like poison. In 399 BCE, Socrates was brought to trial. The charges were impiety and corrupting the youth. On the surface, this was a religious and moral case. But underneath, it was a trial about fear. Athens was afraid of what would happen if its young people stopped trusting the old answers. Socrates could have begged, he could have cried, he could have brought his family forward, he could have promised to stop questioning, but he did not. Instead, he defended his life as a public service. He compared himself to a gadfly. Athens, he said, was like a large horse, powerful, impressive, but slow to wake. His job was to sting it awake. This was not the speech of a man trying to escape death. It was the speech of a man refusing to admit that comfort is more important than truth. Here is the great contradiction. Socrates was killed by democracy, not by a tyrant. The city of public debate executed a man for debating too deeply. The city of citizens killed the citizen who asked what citizenship meant. The city of speech silenced the man who made speech honest. That is why the death of Socrates still matters. It shows that free speech is not only threatened by kings. It can also be threatened by crowds, by fear, by wounded pride, and by people who only like questions when the questions are aimed at someone else. Socrates was found guilty. He was sentenced to drink hemlock. His friends wanted him to escape, but Socrates refused. To him, escaping would betray the laws of the city he had lived under. So he stayed. He drank the poison. His body died, but the questions survived. This is where the story turns. Athens thought it had removed a dangerous man, but death made Socrates more powerful. A living Socrates could annoy people in the marketplace. A dead Socrates could haunt civilization. His student Plato wrote him into dialogues. In those dialogues, Socrates kept walking, kept asking, kept breaking false confidence. Plato built the academy. Aristotle later came out of that tradition, and Western philosophy began to organize itself around a simple but dangerous habit. Do not only collect answers, examine the question. Over time, Socrates was absorbed into institutions. Schools turned his method into teaching. Courts turned questioning into cross-examination. Science turned doubt into experiment. Ethics turned self-examination into a discipline. Modern universities still carry the shadow of his method. Ask, define, challenge, clarify, begin again. Socrates lost his trial, but he won the structure of education. Today, Socrates is not dangerous because he gives us answers. He is dangerous because he takes away easy answers. When a politician says, "Trust me," Socrates asks, "Why?" When a crowd says, "Everyone knows this," Socrates asks, "Does everyone understand it?" When a culture says, "This is normal," Socrates asks, "Is normal the same as good?" And when we say, "I already know," Socrates asks, the most uncomfortable question of all, "Do you?" Athens killed Socrates, but it could not kill his question, because a question is different from a man. A man can be judged, a man can be sentenced, a man can be forced to drink poison. But a question can move from mouth to mouth, from student to teacher, from classroom to courtroom, from one century to the next. That is why Socrates still matters. He reminds us that civilization does not begin when people have answers. It begins when people become brave enough to examine them. And maybe that is why Athens was afraid. Not because Socrates knew too much, but because he made everyone else realize how little they knew.